just gonna hit record
Got it.
right
All
now,
right.
man. How you
Awesome.
doing? How you been?
I'm doing good. I've been doing a lot of paperwork for this case, and a lot of it has been prepared in a joint effort between private legal counsel with my own set of private lawyers who are helping me with all the paperwork that I need to do in order to win this case, or basically force them to dismiss it. Because the next thing we're doing now, coming up for the March 14th docket sounding, is going to be to file a motion to dismiss based on an improper venue. So I'm working on that. Oh, let me lock the house up. So, oh, you did? Okay.
So will they dismiss the whole entire thing if they've got the venue wrong once?
Yeah, because this last hearing on February 15th, I brought it up on the record that we're in an improper venue, which is maritime, where they're forcing a contract. Maritime is contracts. Sorry, babe. There you go. Maritime's contract venue. And so the thing is about doing this, I'm realizing, is that in order for something to happen, something has to be put into motion. They don't probably want a motion to dismiss, but they probably want me to motion to dismiss so they can just, affirm that motion and go, okay, he's putting this in motion. So we're going to go ahead and just dismiss it based on the motion, because I brought it out in open court. They haven't been letting me approach the bar, and I brought it out in open court that that they were flying a maritime flag. I don't know. I think I might have sent you the video where I walked up to the public defender and said,
Yep, Ron, I lost you. Ron, I think I lost you, man. All right.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I lost you for about 10 seconds there.
All right. I think you have. It's because probably I started my car. I went up to the public defender and I asked her on the, and I made a video of it of, why is there a maritime flag, a gold fringed flag flying in the courtroom, which shows that it's maritime instead of a peace flag. See, maritime venue, you're until proven innocent, and then it is judicial venue, which would be flying the peace flag, the U.S. peace flag. You're innocent until proven guilty, and and a maritime venue is about contracting. And I told Jordan Roberts, the public defender, that we're not in a contract. Why are you having a contract forced against you? And I said that when I walked up to her and I recorded that video. It's up on YouTube. I think I sent you that link. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it or not.
Yeah, I watched it. I listened to the whole thing. That was good. It was kind of hard to hear. I commented on it too, and she was playing
Okay.
stupid. She was like, "Oh, that's just decorative. That's just decorative." I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She probably didn't expect it. See, the thing is we have so many, I and my legal team have so many different avenues of approach to kind of put them into a defensive position where they're not prepared to respond and they don't know what we're going to do next. And 10 steps ahead of the entire way. To where now I think they're begging for a dismissal because, as you know, they just keep pushing it forward to another docket sounding where they're just trying to figure out what to do. And since the February 15th docket sounding and Judge Jeffrey W. Williamson coming on as a witness, I don't know if you saw that video. I put it up there. It's like 17 minutes. I only was able to record half of it, but he was a psychologist who I exercised my fifth right to remain silent in the face of his questioning of competency, because the judge had ordered me to go to a competency evaluation by a psychologist, Jeffrey W. Williamson. And so my private legal counsel said that I should plead the Fifth Amendment because you can't criminalize someone invoking a constitutional right. And so I went in there, and I pled the Fifth. And then not pled because I don't plead, but I invoke exercise my Fifth Amendment right. There's a way that my attorney said to state it that you have to say it. I'm going to go ahead and exercise my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. And so I did that, and before I did it, I said, "Hey, can anything I say or do in this during this be used against me in a court of law?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Well, will you go ahead and put that in writing?" And he said, "No, he wouldn't do that." He said, "Oh, well, it'll state that on the test." All right, bye, sweetie. All right. And then, so then I said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and exercise my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent." And I did that. And then he came in on February 15th during this docket sounding, and I went and saw him on January 2nd, 2023. The day after New Year's Day, I had to make an appointment. The public defender, Jordan Roberts, emailed me and said, "Hey, you have to make an appointment, or you can probably, Judge Silverman is probably going to hold you in contempt of court." So I was like, "Fine, I'll make an appointment, but I'm going to just invoke my Fifth Amendment right." I didn't say that to her or anybody until I showed up and did it. And then so Jeffrey Williamson appeared via Zoom call in to my docket sounding on February 15th and said that even though I only met with him for like 5 minutes and didn't answer any questions and just asked him a couple of questions, he found me to be psychotic. He said that I was psychotic and delusional, and they were considering trying to put me into Circles of Care, a mental facility where the judge said I would be rehabilitated to competency. And so I said, about 3/4 of the way through that, while you could tell Judge Williamson Dr. Williamson was reading a prepared statement that I bet was being prompted and led by David Silverman, the judge. And so he had finished talking to Dr. Williamson and then started asking the prosecutor and then the public defender, should I be institutionalized and taken away to Circles of Care because the doctor has found me to be psychotic, but with no history of violence. And so I finally said, "Hey," I yelled out, "is that a maritime flag behind you?" And the judge wouldn't answer me. I go, "Is that a maritime flag? Is this a maritime venue that we're operating in?" Because what that does is it puts everything into a court of contract where they can't force anything on me. And I think you heard when I had approached Jordan Roberts, the public defender, that video that I know is hard to hear. I'm going to re-edit it. I'm going to increase the volume and see if I can clean it up. But I told her I had my DNA blood test that was with me in the courtroom, that I was holding the birth certificate, that I'm not surety for it. And right before I talked to her, I went up to the bailiffs and I held up my birth certificate. I go, "Look, I'm here specially visiting about the Ronald Russell Farnham Trust. Here's the trust." And I held up my birth certificate. "So if you wind up being ordered to arrest Ronald Russell Farnham, then this paper is what you need to take with you and not me. I'm not surety. I'm not to be held as collateral. I'm just here specially visiting, and I am not that trust. I'm the beneficiary." And they just said, "Okay." And then I went and sat down, knowing that I had already forewarned them to not put their hands on me, that I'm not surety. And from what I understand with maritime and through counseling and practicing and discussing with my legal counsel, is that you can't be forced into a contract. And if I'm not saying anything about what's being forced on me, if I'm not objecting or not consenting, then they're going to take it by my acquiescence, by my lack of response, that I'm accepting the offers that they're making.
Right. Exactly.
So about that time, I thought they were going to haul me away. I said to the judge wouldn't answer if it was a maritime flag. So I said to the clerk court, "Who's the clerk of the court?" "You're the clerk court clerk. Is that a maritime flag?" The clerk has to answer. "Is that a maritime flag? Is that a maritime flag? Are we in a maritime venue?" And the clerk wouldn't say anything. So I said, "Let it reflect on the record that we're in a maritime venue by the acquiescence of the clerk." And then right at that moment, they switched their tone to, "Let's just continue this docket to a docket sounding," and not. They were aimed toward hauling me out of there in custody to take me for reconditioning, because they were saying, the doctor said my filings, that they don't even know if I created these filings. Like, I don't even know what he read, but he said my filings made him determine that I was psychotic and delusional.
Well, so what?
So I brought up,
I saw your filings. I mean, they all look pretty legitimate to me. Obviously, I'm not, a judge
lawyer,
or a
attorney.
lawyer, yeah, or any of that, but looked all pretty official to me.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You know, these are legitimate legal filings prepared by legal counsel. I
Right.
read them. You know, when they give me something to file, like all the documents that I've sent to you and that I filed, and that there's hundreds of pages, I've gone through every single one of them and read them word for word several times over, so that I not only know what they say, but I understand and have a working knowledge of the concepts that are being put into the record on this, and what they're saying and what they're asserting, and how it's, you know, reclaiming my control over myself in this entire situation, because I've come to understand now that it's all about what I'm accepting and willing to accept, and if I don't object. So in that hearing on February 15th, every time I heard something that I didn't agree with, that I didn't want to be made as a fact withstanding by their statements, they say things in the open court, and if you're not rebutting it, then it's taken as fact. So every time they'd say something, I'd say, I object, I object, I object. There's no, like they said, they called me a sovereign citizen, and I objected. I said, I object, I object, I object. There's no such thing as a sovereign citizen. And they didn't respond to that. So now on the record, I put it in that there is no such thing as a sovereign citizen. That's just a term. It's not one definition, because a sovereign and a citizen are the polar opposite of each other. A sovereign can't be a citizen due to the nature of citizenry, and a citizen is not sovereign by the very nature of you know, citizenship. So I I I objected to several of the things that they said, and put it on the record. And then I brought it up as a fact that they're on a in operating a maritime venue, um, using basically uninformed forced contracting, uninformed consent forced contracting. So now we're going to be filing a motion for dismissal to put it in motion. Somebody's got to make the motion. The judge is just there to neutrally supervise and make a judgment based on the facts withstanding. And so what now I'm going to put it in motion to have him just dismiss the case, because it has come out now that they're in an improper venue to be holding such a hearing and doing what they're doing. And
Right.
the fact is that what happens when you get a citation, I'll explain this. This is the crucial part. When you get a citation, your name, your all capital name, is given to the clerk of the court, and the clerk creates a case or a trust out of your name, and it assigns people to the different positions in the trust. There's the trustee, the executor, the beneficiary, and whatever the charges are or the thing is in the trust, the value of it. And I've got two charges against me: resisting without violence and failure to appear, because I had changed the venue of one of the dog down things. Look, you guys keep touching me in court. I'm kind of in fear for my personal safety. So we're changing the venue of this to my phone, and I filed that as a motion. And they never responded, and they never agreed to it. And so when I didn't show up, and I was waiting for them to call me on Zoom, they considered me failing to appear. But it's really just a misunderstanding. To be present or specially visit for doc sounding. And so when you walk into a courtroom, the judge is in the trustee position based on the assignments that the clerk of the court, who has created a constructive trust. And a constructive trust is basically an illegal, fraudulent trust created with a title, you know, your name, my all capitalized name. And so, but the positions are handed out. I, the physical person, am the beneficiary. The judge is the trustee, and that's a liable position. And the prosecutor is the executor. And then with me, an executor position is a position that carries liability also. They have to basically pay the charges to the beneficiary. So when you stand up in front of the podium and the judge says state your name, record, are you Ronald Russell? I'm wrong. And now I'm taking over the position trust,
and the judge is surreptitiously taking the beneficiary position. So I have not accepted the position. They haven't been able to get me on there. The first time the judge flew the courtroom, David Silverman, when I went in, my right hand up, she was like, "State your name for the record." I said, :space RONYMOUS, Renonymous. And she was like, Ronald Farnham, he's not here. I'm putting out an arrest for Ronald Farnham because she didn't remain as Ronald Russell Farnham. And so
Yep, I lost you again there, Ron. Froze right on a side profile of you right there. We lost you again, and it froze on like this side profile as you're walking by.
do you have
Uh,
did you get the parts about the trustee positions?
yeah, we got that. Yes, we heard that. And you can't keep going. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the different venues too, because I think that's important. Was there maritime, judicial, and admiral? I think, is that right, or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
Admiralty, Maritime, and Judicial.
Okay, yeah, because I think that's important for people to understand how the court looks at a venue, because the venue doesn't necessarily mean a physical location what they're at. It's what the contract is through which they're proceeding the court with, you know. So
Yeah,
that's that. This is what you're working with right now, is that they were in a wrong venue, and the flag means everything. They're not going to fly a maritime flag if it's a judicial hearing, and vice versa. And then
correct.
very important for them that when all the paperwork gets filed before the court, before the date and all this happens, that they have the correct venue, because that contract is wrong. It's criminal. It's against the law. And that's one thing here, you know, too, is that the law doesn't have to be criminal, right? Because the law is supposed to be there to protect people, to really charge people that are doing harm and doing wrong things, criminals, right? But what's happening in here, and I think is what we've been talking about, all these different talks we've been having here, is what we're trying to highlight here is that we have a system that's using a good, valid system, the legal system, and they're using it for criminal acts. And they're very smart at it. They know legalese very well, these lawyers and things. And a lot of these people, these lawyers and prosecutors and this type of thing, they're so compartmentalized that all they know is what they've been, you know, taught, and they may not necessarily see it as being criminal. It's just like being a doctor, right? You learn, all you're learning is the Rockefeller handbook for, you know, for killing people through allopathic medicine. But doctors don't look at it that way. They're looking at it like, I'm helping people, you know, through cancer radiation treatments and butchering people, cut everything out, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you know, it's the same thing with the legal system. It's there to help, just like the medical system's supposed to be, but it has gone corrupt, because now what we're looking at here is like, you always follow the money. What is the biggest thing that they want the most is funnel the money every way you possibly can. And if you got to create some loopholes to do it, create some loopholes. So when you're in there and they're trying to fly a different venue, what are they trying to get from you? They want to suck your energy out of you and lock you away and take everything away from you. Right. And they weren't counting on you understanding the legal system the way you do. And now you're trying to expose them for that. So just to clarify there, and if you want to talk a little bit about the different venues, that'd be kind of cool, because I mean, I'd like to learn more about that myself.
Well, the basic thing to understand is that there's basically two different types of venues that are really usually in operation, and one is judicial, where it's traditional, like what we understand, where a judge is going to make a determination based on facts withstanding. And I thought I was in a judicial court until I learned about the maritime flag. And the maritime flag is one of contracts, where if you're not actively participating in the college in the contract with consent and understanding, then you're haphazardly entering into contracts by acquiescence and not rebutting presumptions that are being used against you about yourself. So the flag that would fly in the judicial court would be without the gold fringe, and then the flag that flies in the maritime court is gold fringed. And remember, whether it's a judicial court or a maritime court, it's still a vessel, and you're still on the territory or in the territory of the court by being on their ship that is dry docked, basically, because especially in maritime. And so they fly that flag there because they are a vessel, and they put on a stage play basically to do this whole court-like production when really it's just a contract negotiation. And I sat and watched David Silverman for like 2 hours the other day on February 15th while he docket called several defendants in the court and had them do the same thing and asked them the same questions, basically as a pre-clearance to form a legal contract with them. You know, you're not going to sign a contract if you're drunk, if you're being coerced, if you're doing it against your will. So first he would have them swear in by raising their right hand and swearing to tell the truth, and then have them state their name. So they would state their name, and then that automatically would put them into the trustee position and switch positions with the judge, and then the judge would become the beneficiary. And now then the judge would go ahead and say, look, are you making this decision with your own, under your own consent? Yes, Your Honor. Are you being forced to do this against your will? No, Your Honor. Are you happy with the work that the public defender did for you today? Are you satisfied with their work for you? Yes, Your Honor. Are you on any drugs or alcohol? No, Your Honor. You're making this in the full knowledge and understanding of the charges? Yes, Your Honor. So he asked them a bunch of questions to make sure that they are putting it onto the record that they're going into a contract of their own free will in a clear state of mind, not influenced by duress or drugs. But they don't realize that. The defendant standing there has no idea that he's becoming the trustee, the trusted party, the trustee, the one who has the liability to pay the claims now, the charges to the beneficiary, by simply standing there and asking and answering all these questions, instead of saying what I would say is, you know, what I did, where I said, I'm not that Ronald Russell Farnham Trust, I'm Renonymous. And the judge had to flee the courtroom because the judge was still then holding the liability, and they didn't want to do any plea bargaining because I would still be the beneficiary and get all the benefits of the charges paid by the trustee into the trust. And so judicial court is different in that there's an injured party, there's a claim, and it's all about justice being served to the damaged party and remedy being found. In a courtroom of maritime, it's contracts, so there's really no remedy. There's a loss of remedy there. If anything, and the remedy that is being done is the execution of the contract. If you were going to get technical and say, well, there is remedy, the beneficiary gets the charges of the trust and the contract. Yeah, but it's an illicitly lopsided, unconscionable contract that has been manipulated by the court system or the judge and the prosecutor and the public defender and the clerk of the courts, all collaborating to make this financial transaction happen. And even though you might say that it's compartmentalized and they're just doing their jobs, no, they are consciously working together to cash out on a constructive trust, a fraudulent trust being created with a case number, a trust number, and that not only that, but the clerk of the courts, I found out, has a tax identification number. So they're a for-profit business. So they're operating out of the Harry T. Moore Justice Center in Vieira. They're using the police to help them bring in collateral to be bailed around by bail bondsmen and bailiffs and all these jail guardians of wards of the state, because that's what we become as collateral wards under guardianship, so that the trust maintains its value for the charges and that someone will show up and take the trustee position. That's all they care about. They want you to show up, and the bail bondsmen guarantee that by moving you around, and the guards move you around in chains so that you'll stand up there at the podium and take the trustee position. It's freaking criminal. It's as criminal as it gets. It's gangs They're thugs in uniforms in gang colors, and they're perpetrating consciously a racket, a perfected racket, big time, using legal English against citizens who are speaking only formal English and seeing the words meaning something totally different.
Yeah, I think that what, I mean, my previous frame of mind would be, if somebody's in court and they did something wrong or committed a crime, that anybody that's there working to create resolution to that case, which is basically the woman or whatever is going to be prosecuted, have fines, go to jail. That the thought being, well, you shouldn't have committed this crime, otherwise you wouldn't have to, pay the penalty, the penalties, right? Whatever those penalties may be to the beneficiary. But the way that I've been learning it, the way you've been explaining it, is exactly what you're right. What you're talking about is that they're basically just coercing people through fear tactics and legal English, legalese, and people will totally submit to it because they don't know how. They don't know how to push back against it. They don't know how to create, the rhetoric in which is going to get them, the opposing party, off contract, you know what I mean, or exposing the criminality behind it. I had a question, I forget what it was. Anyway, keep going. If you got anything there, that's
They try now at my February 15th docket hearing, they were going to try and institutionalize me and until I was rehabilitated to competency. So I told my sisters heard about that, and they know some doctors and some people and some organizations. So they hooked me up with the it's basically the Citizens Against Psychiatry, where they sent me the form for my psychological living will, psychiatric living will, that through the Constitution prohibits anyone from institutionalizing me for any amount of time and forcing treatment or medication on me. And now I've never taken psych meds in my whole life. I've never had any violence. I've never had any history of psychosis. I've held regular jobs for years at a time, had a top secret clearance for 15 years. I've been a league MVP in sports, a team MVP in sports. I've got a bachelor's degree. I graduated basic training, language school, sergeant school. I even received plaques from different military commands, one from the U.S. Central Command giving me my goodbye plaque, calling me the MacGyver of Central Command, where I worked in the intelligence community at Central Command, dealing with all kinds of classified information regarding the Middle East. I've been a counterterrorism analyst. I've briefed generals and ambassadors. I've moved to Hollywood, and I wrote, produced, directed, and financed and paid everybody under SAG contracting a feature-length motion picture that's now in distribution on Amazon Prime. I just finished my next movie. I'm a sports official. I umpire baseball games, behind the plate, calling strikes for young kids and adults, for Major League Baseball players. This weekend, I umpired the world famous Mo Vaughn, who used to be the big left-handed power hitter for the Boston Red Sox. My nephews are going to go down and take hitting instruction from them. I was talking to Mo this weekend where we're talking about him being friends with Derek Jeter and how Derek Jeter wind up having to leave the Marlins because he realized that the Florida Marlins owners weren't committed to winning and things like that. So I'm just saying that to qualify myself as a non-psychotic, non-delusional person, living soul who is intentionally being railroaded by collusion now with a medical doctor who was specifically handpicked by David Silverman to try and find me incompetent so that they could force a public defender on me, so the public defender could assume the role of trustee and then force me under police power to pay the judge who's trying to take beneficiary position, now that I've laid out what a trust is and how they're doing this contracting. So they're trying to make it so that I cannot speak in court, but I've been speaking from the audience and objecting things. The last one, and I'm ordering the digital record of the transpirations of what happened on the docket calling. I recorded about half of it, but there's still the final part where I was objecting, and they just forwarded to another docket calling, and they were really leading up to trying to haul me out of there in handcuffs and take me to circles of care. But since then, I've gotten my psychiatric living will notarized and stamped, and witnessed and is going to be, and now all of my friends and family and legal counsel have it. And if I was ever hauled away, they could immediately go to wherever I am and hand that to the doctors there, and they would have to release me because my psychiatric living will makes it so that no one can hold me, and unless I'm doing some harm and having a psychotic episode. But I'm sure if I got hauled into a psychiatric facility, they would sit and talk with me, and I'm non-combative and there's no delusions or psychosis, that they would realize that there's a big corruption going on. So I don't think that there's any chance anyway that, they could reasonably put me into a psychiatric facility. It just doesn't seem like that could happen based on my state of being and the way I am, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, through your credentials and everything you've done in your life, and lack of criminal history,
Yeah.
obviously, it's like that's what surprises me. I'm like, if I was the judge or I was part of this team that's trying to kind of pull you into all this, take you down, I'd be like, this is ridiculous. I mean, it's almost like such a waste of time, effort, energy. But that goes to show you that their resources that these people have are like limitless because they don't care. They are completely draining the resources that they have from the public, taxpayer, the government, all this, which is us. We're the one who is shelling out all of our money, so they can do stupid things like this. I would feel like this is ridiculous. I mean, the guy's totally credentialed. It was a minor crime. I mean, not even a crime. It wasn't even a crime at all. It was like, okay, his car wasn't registered. He did get abused. He was physically assaulted. I could see that. If he dismissed, if he's good with just this being dismissed, then we're going to dismiss this case and I'll move on to the real criminals, right? But no, it's like the guy is like literally like he's the sorcerer wearing the black robe, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to whirl and dirl all my magic spell words that I possibly can, and try to take this guy down, because what else better do I have to do? It's an ego thing. It's like the guy's really freaking trying to utilize his resources to do this, but I'm really pumped with what you're doing. I know it's extremely hard, and it's like the shit you've had to go through a victimless crime, how much stress is put into your life in every direction. But what you're doing is learning a ton. Like, you already know a lot, but look what you're learning through the experience of it now. And then now you're teaching it, and you're able to put it out there. And because, a lot of this, Ron, what I've come to realize is that, like, and I mean this in the best way. It's like, it's almost like dumbing down dumbing down the realities, right? So it's like sometimes if I'm listening to you talk, I can get I'm getting better at understanding because I've been researching this stuff too, and I've been listening to other things. So it's like we've been so conditioned, like of the other way of thinking we know what law is and how it all operates and everything. Don't do this because the law says it's bad. You see an octagonal, stop sign, and you roll through it, bad, you're going to get a ticket. If you have a beer and you drive down the road, don't do that, because we've been so conditioned with fear that we don't even question the authority. And what's ended up happening is now what we find ourselves in 2023, after hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years, we find ourselves so locked into this box of control, and we are slave to it, where we don't even question anything, right? So what you're doing is you're peeling away those layers of that onion and getting down to the truth, which is, we're not even necessarily sovereign beings. We're free souls. We're literally free beings, unlimited animated beings. And this is what we need to recapture, as human beings. And what you're doing is showing how this can work through the judicial system, which is very interesting, because the judicial system is entangled with the medical system. It's entangled with the entertainment industry. It's entangled with every big corporation. It's entangled with big bank and big government and big farm, everything. It's completely entangled in that. And it's like we have to pull the threads out a little bit at a time to get to the core,
Yeah. To retrain the minds of the public, because like you said, we've been indoctrinated into it for years. And I've kind of been carrying the phrase around with me now, like, everything we've been indoctrinated into is a complete backward lie, that it's the total opposite. like putting your hand over your heart for the national anthem. You're really just swearing an oath to a theme song of a corporation pretending to have federal tax control over you. And that same company has all of these departments or commands, the Department of Defense that has basically taken over the entire world militarily, including the United States. And yet we're saluting their flag. We're standing for their national anthem / theme song. We're putting our hand over our heart for their corporate logo, the so-called American flag. People, United States citizens call themselves Americans, and we are not Americans. I'm a Floridian. I'm really a New Yorkian. I found out it's where you were born. I'm a New Yorker, a New Yorkian, based on my birth certificate and my status, style, and condition now of my name. As you know, I recently, and this is part of the process, did a name change. And I did it down in Indian River County. And thanks to your dad for letting me use his address on the paperwork so that I could do it there locally, because you kind of have to be a resident of the area where you're changing your name. But I'm about to take an ad out in the newspaper now in Indian River County. I've just been researching which legal publication to put it in. It's like $400. I'm going to have to put an ad in the newspaper to legally change the style, status, and condition of my name from all capital letters Ronald Russell Farnham to upper lowercase Ronald Russell Farnham. And in the motion to the judge, because now I have a case number and I have a judge assigned to the case. And what they had me do then for this case is when you do a name change, they also want you to do a fingerprint background check. So I had to drive down to Indian River County to the Indian River County Sheriff's Department and get my fingerprints done. And then I have to and I already uploaded them and paid for the background investigation. So, it's costing me it cost $400 for the petition for the name change. And then another $50 total for this fingerprint thing. And then it's going to be $400 to run an ad. So it's going to cost me almost $1,000 when it's all said and done to change the style, status, and condition of my name. So that way, instead of them being able to say, well, you're Ronald Russell Farnham, here it is in all capital letters, I can say, no, that's not how my name is spelled. That style, status, condition of that name is not mine. I'm the beneficiary of that trust, though, but I'm not the name on that paperwork. I'm not that all capitalized name. Here's my name change adjudication. Here's the newspaper ad right here. And no one came forward within 30 days to try and claim that name. So I'm all capital Ronald Russell. I'm not all capital Ronald Russell Farnham. I'm upper lowercase, and I'm the beneficiary and living soul. And the maritime courts, one thing I didn't mention before, is they don't deal with living beings. They deal with dead entities, corporations. They consider you, when your birth certificate is created, that you're dead and lost at sea. That's why also recently, since our last interview, I've had a DNA test done by LabCorp. So I keep my blood DNA test with me so that it proves that I'm not dead or missing or lost at sea. In fact, here, look, this is my court case. This bottom one right here, this is like all of the pleading, not pleadings, but paperwork I filed in here. And now I had to start a new file here. This purple one is something different. That's some personal files. But in here is my blood test, my fingerprint card that shows that I'm alive, I'm living, I'm not deceased or dead, I'm not lost at sea. Because one of the presumptions that the court makes out of you is that you're dead and lost at sea since birth. So my DNA test rebuts that whole presumption being made about me. So now, according to the Minors with Disabilities Act, I'm no longer considered dead or lost at sea or a minor, because now I'm 25. I'm older than 25 years old, which removes me as a minor, and so I don't have a disability. No disability, not a minor, not dead or lost at sea. Yeah, we've covered a lot.
That's all right. Rock, he has there's some bugs in his room, I guess. I don't know, and he's like freaking out over it.
Uh-oh.
My kids, they get an aversion to bugs. I don't know. It's weird.
So does my girlfriend Cheryl. She don't like bugs either.
Anyway,
you know, they're free pets. Just tell them.
yeah,
You know, people eat lobster and shrimp, and to me, those are like the bugs of the ocean. Like, we won't eat certain bugs, but we'll eat other bugs. I don't know. It's kind of
yeah, I
gross.
know. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's anyway. So anyway, let's pick up where you left off here.
See, this is my DNA test through LabCorp right here. I mean, I can open it up and show you what I've gone through, but I came in the mail. I went and had my blood drawn. They did a whole DNA test. I keep my birth certificate on me, born in New York. Um, this is the sheet I just got from the courthouse to go ahead and order the digital copy of the court proceedings from February 15th that is on the record where the judge would not answer that we're in a maritime venue. This is what my birth certificate is worth.
Yeah,
Everybody
how much?
has a birth.
What is that? Hold on a little closer. Yeah, it's not. What does it say? That way, I can't really. It's fuzzed, blurred out.
Um, my birth bond is worth $14,556,522,000.
What's that? What website did you go? Because there's
I didn't do this. A private party who has access to this information, my attorneys paid to have him get my what's called my QSIP number and my bonds, my how much my bond is worth. It's my fingerprints. So
That's I want to say that's really interesting, and that's a video that I'd like to do separately because I've seen some different videos, and and actually went through the process where the videos are describing how you can go through um, different websites, right, where you can see and have access to what your birth bond is worth. And the one wasn't that much, but when I went to this other one, I was surprised. It was like in the tens of millions, you know. And I think that's what I'd really like to do at one point is to be able to describe or show people how to, and this is what you're doing right now, how to have access to what's rightfully yours, which is your birth bond.
and it's pretty simple based on my understanding at this point because we haven't gotten this far yet, but we're going to do it. But my lawyers, my legal counsel, are taking me through this in steps, step by step. And we just filed the letter of notice of interpleader into the case. Now, an interpleader is one of two or more parties that has claims to registry funds in a case. Now, this case has caused there to be funds entered into my birth bond registry or this constructive trust that's created. And so now I'm filing as an interpleader, meaning that I am the legally filed that I'm basically the beneficiary of that trust and of those funds and the charges put into the trust. So as an interpleader, I'll be able to go directly to the clerk of the court and order the clerk to write me checks or money orders off of my birth bond in, until I've cashed it out, which as is 14 billion plus.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, so but everybody has this. And so it's a matter of when I learn the process, I'm talking to my legal counsel. We're going to put together all the information so that we can get it out there because this is a precedence setting situation that I'm in now with this and I think we're going to leverage all of what I go through in this case and all the filings and the outcome and the interpleading and the bond amount and everything to help teach every responsible living soul how to become financially free by being able to cash out and go, hey, you guys created this bond. It's got value. All this time, we're the beneficiaries, but we've been lied to and hoodwinked and stolen from and forced into debt slavery. And they've obfuscated the truth from us all that we don't have to be slaves, that we actually shouldn't be slaves. We can pay for everything, turn our bond amount over, but no, they're hoarding it all for themselves to prop up government facilities and pay all kinds of so-called tax money, and where you wonder where all this profit is coming from. Well, our bonds are what's propping up the Federal Reserve or International Monetary Fund based on our birth certificates. You know, that's why it's so important. They keep a roll. I was watching Joe Rogan, the stand-up comedian. He likes to mention how there's the number counter at different parts around the world that are watching the people being born, and it's like tick, 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 and it's going fast. Then there's the death count, and you know, I have my dad's death certificate uh right here. Um, where is it? It's right here in this green bag, and it's printed on bond paper. It's his death certificate. And if you look at a death certificate, and a birth certificate, they're both printed. Let me open up this bag and I'll show the audience. They're both printed on banknote paper. So I'm not just making it up that, you know, a death certificate is printed on bond paper, and it's apostilled. Look up what an apostille is. This is an apostille printed on bond paper bond right here. This is my dad's death certificate. And if you look at the back of it, you can see the different watermarks and the fibered paper. And you can see the apostille right here, which is a seal that makes it, you know, legitimate. And so, you know, this is worth funds. It's got serial numbers on it, you know, barcodes and everything, and it is financial worth, and all of us.
Let me ask you, Ron. So if that's the case, like let's say like your bonds, you know, or your dad's bond, say is worth, you know, $10 billion hypothetically, and he passes away. So the state claims the beneficiary, right? So all of that goes right to the state, correct?
Yep, seems to be the case. That's what it appears to be happening, because my mom and my sisters and I, or anybody, family members, we didn't get anything out of it. So it's somewhere being used somehow.
Right.
And that's real bond paperwork.
Yeah,
That's a financial instrument, negotiable bond.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, beyond interesting.
Yeah, interesting. You know, it's funny, I've really dissect words these days, because all these words that we got trained to believe meant one thing mean other things too, like interesting, like interested parties in this case are people who are making interest off the bonds that have been created out of this constructive trust that's been created. So when you talk about interested parties, and when the lawyers were entering about other cases, they were saying, let me entertain you with the facts here. And that means basically to enter factual information into the record, entertain. It becomes a fact withstanding. So their word usage is very specific. And I've listened to now, after several docket hearings that I've attended, watched the way that they handle the operations of the court. And, you know, most people just go into court once in a lifetime, maybe, and they stand there, they swear in, they've been taught that by the TV, that's what you're supposed to do. But really, there's a whole scam being perpetrated against everyone.
Absolutely. And I think what's interesting, like what you said there too, is that what there is there's a polarization, you know, that exists in everything, especially language. So, and this is where language comes from. It comes from, at its most basic foundation, is poles, you know, polarization of two opposing forces working together to create something. And it's very, very amazing and just awe-inspiring to me, really, to understand when you break the basic modality of language, it comes from the understanding of what an atom is. And when you look at the, you know, hyperboloid toroid, and you look at all of our language and words, it's all based off of the electron, proton, and the neutron. You know what I mean? And all of these words, and they all play phonetically on this very basic understanding. Now, words are very angelic, like the English language comes from the angles, which is the angels. It's an angelic language. But what we've seen is this co-opted idea of what it is. So we've taken the polarization, and instead of understanding a word for its positive value, right, and really moving forward with a deeper understanding of language, what we've done is we cut that part off, and we've really focused on sort of this negative. So we've been polarized really in one direction, where everything, and this is the trick, everything's co-opted, right? Words have now been taken and co-opted to means something to sound like it means something good, but it really means something negative. It's like the circle of care, like that place that you were talking about. What a joke. Circle of care? That's not a circle of
Yeah,
care. There's no
yeah.
caring happening there at all, but it makes
Circles of care, and that gets back to what you were saying about the hyperbola and the circles and the atoms and the,
right.
the friction and everything.
Right. Well, in astrology, the circle is the ring of Saturn, and the center is the sun. And when in astrology, that is the symbol of the sun. That's the symbol astrologically to me, which is the real science. Astrology is that, but that's not a negative thing. But they've taken it to be negative. Like there's entrapment there, entrainment. Like you said, entertain is to enter and to entrain, to entrap the mind into believing one thing and to believe what they say. It's like when all this was going on with the COVID stuff, it was like, you remember that, we're all in this together. Like, what kind of joke is that? That's a co-opted statement because yeah, we are all in
Together,
this.
but 6 feet apart.
Yeah, right. We are all in this together, and that's a very positive thing. But then they co-opted it to mean like, no, you're all in this freaking slave camp together. And then the other one was build back better. This is a big tagline that they used over and over again to get into the minds of people. Like, this is what we need to do. But it's like, no, it's not what we need to do. Like, like all the psyoptic stuff out there that we're saying, oh, just sit back and eat the popcorn and let watch everything happen and don't worry about a thing. Well, it's like, no, it's like that's the opposite of what you need to be doing, because you need to be learning the stuff that you're talking about so that you can protect yourself and be very equipped with the knowledge. Because if you're not equipped with the knowledge, the real knowledge, then you're going to be pounded into the ground over and over and over again. But
Yeah,
it is fascinating how they've co-opted everything. Like you just go out, get in your car and you drive down the road. I mean, the stop sign to me, the stop sign,
I know you
it
mentioned
irks
that.
me because what what the stop sign is. It's an octagon, right? And if you take that in a third dimensional view, it's a hypercube. And what a hypercube is, it's a cube that folds inside of itself over and over again. What it symbolizes is brainwash. It means that your mind is inside of this cube and it cannot get out. So every time that you see that symbol with the word stop in it, that is one of the most what is one of the most powerful subliminal messages that you can send to any human being. And we see it every day, continuously, over and over again. It's one of the most brainwashing things, and
Hmm.
people don't look at it like that. They're going, no, it's a stop sign. You need to come up and you need to stop. So, but why does it have to be an octagon? And why does it have to have the word stop in it? I mean, there's better ways to direct traffic around here instead of these very to me nefarious symbols that are being used. It's not
Yeah,
just
like,
a stop sign, it's everywhere.
yeah, I
Yeah.
know. There's obelisks and pyramids and the Freemason symbol. I umpired baseball this weekend, and I grew up playing baseball. And to come to find out, baseball is a Freemason sport designed by the Freemasons with the compass and square and the generating principle, the G, right there on the field. Home plate is the base of the compass, and center field is the base of the square, and they overlap each other. And you got home, first, second, and third, and then back to home, and it's real. And then there's a big white line that goes all the way around it. It's basically, I see it as a symbol of the circle in which we are trapped, that we can start at home plate, but you hit a home run, you still got to only run around in a circle and come right back where you started. 90 feet, base paths times 4 is 360 degrees. The pitcher's mound is the generating principle of chaos. And the person, and I don't know if we ever talked about this on your show before or not, but I'm just recapping it, that Abner Doubleday, his noted as the creator of Major League Baseball, but he denies it in his memoirs, and if he even exists, because if you look at the word Abner Doubleday, means no thing today. So it is
Abner
nothing.
kind of makes me think of like abracadabra too, almost kind of like
And ab means to remove. Nair, I believe, is nothing, removing nothing. And then today, double is two, and then day, today, no thing. He really basically, his whole name says that there's nothing to it. It doesn't even, he doesn't even really exist. And he was just a name given as the creator of baseball, but it's really a Freemason sport with the truth hidden in plain sight. of the compass and square laid over the field, and the fact that we can only just go in a circle on this in this domed, enclosed atom toroid field and wind up right back where we started. And
Right.
there's no way out.
Right. That's funny. A lot of the you're right. The baseball field is definitely a Masonic it's
Compass
laden,
and square.
yes,
It's
it's laden
definitely,
with Masonic ideology. Not that Masonic things are bad, like you know too. I mean, the Masonic, the builders are to me a very, very important part of our history and where we're at
yeah.
right now. What we're talking about, see, is the occulted Masonic knowledge, and the occulted Masonic knowledge is what's been purposely hidden. At the beginning, I believe that the knowledge was hidden because from Hermes Trismegistus and
Thoth.
Leonardo, yeah, Thoth. I mean, even the later ones like Leonardo da Vinci and people throughout history, they were hiding it in a sense that if it got into the wrong hands, what we're seeing now in our world, that this would happen. Like it would be like if this gets in the wrong hands, humanity's done for, because the nefarious end of this, the left hand of this, is going to come in and just overbear the right side of everything, and there's not going to be a neutral polarization. There's not going to be the proper the proper toroidal movement inside of every single person in the side of our world. And so now, like we were kind of texted a little bit the other day, was what we need to do now really is take what was hidden and bring it into light. And once this begins to happen and people can see that the Masonic building of is really just it's knowledge. It's basically it's our internal, everything goes into our physiology internally and mentally, and it's really a projection of what we see on the outer world. It's like, as
Yeah.
above so below, as within so without. It truly
And there
is.
is no outer world, right? I mean, think about it. You and I are sharing a sphere of influence on reality right now, and our apparent outer worlds are colliding together, and you're seeing out what I think I'm seeing right out in front of me, but it's all going on right here. You think you're seeing me and everything going on out in front of you, but it's all happening right here. I mean, it's just so
Temporal.
bizarre to try and understand the nature of reality. And if you look at as above, so below, you're an atom, you're a toroid field, an apple's a toroid field, an atom is a toroid field, and the earth is a toroid field. And I've been thinking about that as far as the magnetic center, where the North Pole is called the North Pole, but it's really magnetic center of the toroid field. And I think in the middle of where the hyperbola is the black sun going up and down, and then it's causing the cycle of the sun and moon going overhead as all part of the toroid field that the Earth is. That I think we can't escape, and I think our soul energy recycles at the aurora borealis at magnetic north. That's just kind of my opinion right now, because our toroid field, if we were to look at it under a certain type of photography, you would see your giant 60-foot toroid sphere with all of its colors that coincide with the aurora borealis. So I think we're just colored energy, condensed down into this apparently physical vessel inside of an apparently physical vessel that's really just another toroid field, and as above, so below. So,
Yep, I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that and I mean these are just beliefs and thoughts too, but one of them is that I think that once humanity gets to a point where we are seeing, not only understanding this knowledge on a mental level and even on a heart level, that it has to become a completely systemic knowledge. You know what I mean? Where the entire body is now intrinsically not even having to know the words of what it is, but it is now beginning to experience it
oh,
fully. You know what I mean? Fully.
yeah.
It's like, it's kind of like what the Vedic, traditions talk about, like Buddha, the what enlightenment is.
Nirvana.
Yeah, you've heard stories of some of these monks that would meditate and then it actually turn into a toroid. They would actually see the movement of that toroidal movement, and then they would just disappear. I don't know how true that is. You know what I mean? But that's always fascinated me since I was a
That's what
teenager.
Thoth. That's what Thoth says in the Emerald
Yeah,
Tablets of Thoth. That if
that's
you
right.
can abstain from eating, like I've really been working on fasting, and it's hard to do because I have a lot of outside influence. I mean, I just had my birthday. There was New Year's. There's parties. It's how am I supposed to, and I'm doing good though, because I'm only eating one meal a day. I'm trying to eat just one meal every other day, but I constantly have this guilty feeling that Thoth is there going, dude, I wrote it in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. If you want to live to be 1,000 years old or 867 years old, then you're going to have to participate in your own health and healing. And I understand that. And I'm really working on purifying my own being so I can become as much of a light being and have Kundalini experiences. My buddy Mike, he's talked about how he's had Kundalini experiences the more that he cleanses himself and works on his breathing and meditation. And so that's where you get that, maybe that DMT release or the connection to the universe, where you realize what we are and what your beingness is, or become part of the one. I think maybe becoming part of the one is when your soul might travel into the aurora borealis, but that
Right.
could all be conditioning too. We could be in a computer simulation also. There's different theories.
That's true. That is true. We were kind of texting about this yesterday, and I think where it's really at is the natural sciences, because this is from our very minute third dimensional perspective that every human has. Based on our five senses, but really our six senses, because we get an intuition and our psychic abilities and everything. Is we're using these to understand natural science, natural reality, and when we begin to see this, we begin to see the inner working of what really makes human beings what we are, both physically, apparently physical, and spiritually. And when we see a combination of these two come into harmony together, I think that this is when that next evolution or this kind of raise in consciousness will happen. Because once we are really done with this third dimensional loop, right? There's only so much juice you can squeeze out of the lemon. You know what I mean? I think then that's when everything begins to shift. These pole shift begins to change, and we kind of move on to another awareness. It's like kind of moving from like a mosquito to, to a, I don't know, to an animal, to a human, right? Because it's like you're kind of jumping through these different conscious modes and things that you are aware of and what you have the ability to be aware of. It's just going to grow and grow and grow, or evolutionize. I don't know what the term is, but just growing in consciousness, not just as an individual, although that's where it begins and that's the most important part, but how it all begins to happen, because we are all one here. We are one. We share one consciousness, is what I believe. In the ether, we're sharing these things in the ether and these different pathways coming into the physical vessel. We kind of take it, our little computer, our subconscious mind gives it to our conscious brain, and then we have some kind of personal, identification with it, so we can speak about it or some experience, and then boom, we're pulling things from the ether constantly to have conversation. You know what I mean? So anyways, I think, that's just my personal opinion. I think that we are
It's
probably
amazing that we've
looping here.
evolved into the creatures that we are, that are able to do that as a a magnetic. Because remember what Bonacci was saying, Santos Bonacci, and you've been sending me videos, and I've been watching them, about how there's just three forces. There's the dielectric force, and then there's the magnetism force, and the magnetism is the steady state of fixed, like the earth is. That there's the dielectric force that goes through it and creates reality. And then you talk about what we are physically, and my friend Mike and I, we were talking about this. I've been filming these fireside chats in my backyard by the fire pit, and just putting the video on the fire, and we talk about whatever we feel like talking about it. And it's going on Amazon Primes, and I've got a couple of episodes, or at least one episode, up on my Rumble channel and on YouTube. But Mike and I was telling him, I go, look, man, I've come to understand something, and this is true, that your lips are made out of the same thing as your anus. And that ultimately, if you look at what we and everything are, is we're just one tube, a snake or a worm or the reptile. And that snake, the reptile, is pervasive in a lot of the Freemason symbolism and the Pythagorean illuminated Freemasonic symbolism across the world. And if you think about it, every single living creature is just that basic shape, is a single tube. And then all these appendages have grown off of that tube over the years, so that we could become more, so that we could move around, get stuff, do stuff. And it's all a part of what our basic creature at our core is. Even with they say the primary brain is the reptilian brain, and it's connected right there basically to the back of the tube. And that we started out as a species as just this single lips to anus tube, or snake, or worm, or reptile, or whatever you want to call it. And that's what we are, all of us, every single creature, and with evolved appendages that have evolved on us over time. And that's just an observational truth or fact or reality. So we just happen to communicate in a certain way, but all the other animals, it's so weird. We can't really communicate with them. At least we don't, the regular non-scientific community that's not working on communicating with animals. But anyway, once I realized that, wait a second, we are the reptiles, we are the snakes, we are the worm, and we thought they were, but we're really just this evolved worm. It kind of puts it into perspective of how sacred life is. How is there reincarnation? There was a movie with Michael Douglas I saw several years ago, like maybe 10 years old, maybe 7 or 8 years old, where Michael Douglas's character proves that reincarnation is true. And so everybody in life just starts, a lot of people, if they're not happy with their life, they're like, I'm going to start over. And people are just dropping like flies in this movie. And the question about it is if there is reincarnation, why live a crappy life? Why not just shoot yourself and start over? So, maybe there's certain things that we're not supposed to know, and it might affect our time that we spend here or something. I don't know. There's a lot more questions that I have than I do have answers. And I mean, like, I don't even know really the shape of the earth. We're just going by what Santos Bonacci and what we think, and Kenneth Wheeler, what resonates with us as far as what a probable truth is. And it does seem like if the electron world and the microscopic or subatomic world is true, then everything is just that basic shape, the toroid field with the dielectric circles and the magnetism operating a signal. And then based on that, we are mentally creating an image in our minds of us being evolved worms. So
Yeah, no, that's interesting. You're right. It's very easy to focus purely on the material, and I think that really shows where a lot of us are, because it's what we've been programmed to be, really down lower into that root sacral chakra area, which is really concerned with survival mostly. And what we really have is a whole nother combination of energy centers that are promoting more than just this material sight. You know what I mean? I think that, this is where, like, mescaline and peyote and ayahuasca and these different types of drugs that people take is to kind of break the boundary of what their physical mind can see, and
DMT.
DMT, and take it to another area where you can see things that aren't really there. And I think the only question anybody has is that really there, or am I just seeing it? But that shouldn't even really be questioned, because I can tell you right now, as a younger person who experimented with this stuff, I saw tons of things that I wrote down, and I had to later go and research what they were, and come to find out they were very real things that were being accessed from the ether. I was pulling all this information in a heightened state of being from the ether, and then coming back into this reality, sober reality, and then begin to research these different symbols and things, to be blown away. And some of them I'm just discovering now. I'm just discovering what some of these things are now, which this is over 20 years ago.
Wow.
So it's very fascinating. There's way more that exists beyond the material world, and I think that once we do the work, like you're talking about, clearing yourself and cleansing, and being not just cleansing of mind, but cleansing of the things we put inside of ourselves, the meditation, the prayer, these things all are very conducive to aiding that natural cycle that we go through with it's like, well, one of the things I learned with Bonacci, which was really cool, was the trip that the Christos, the oil of the brain, that it takes when it sorry, let me just do something real quick here.
It goes down and it comes back up your spine, and it causes the release of the energy.
Right.
And
once a month. So if you're really clear and cleansed, and so I actually looked this up for myself and for Tracy. So really what it is that you look to see when the moon is in your sun sign. So it's basically the exact time that you were born, okay, where the moon was. And it's wherever that was in the zodiac. Okay. Mine's Taurus. I was born when Taurus, it was a Taurus moon. So I'm Taurus moon, basically. So it changes every month. So you can see you see where your moon is in your sun sign every month, and then for that 2.2 or 2.3 days, that is when the Christos begins to take the trip down the spinal cord. It goes down into the sacrum, it plants that seed there, and then that is when it ascends back up, right? It goes through the claustrum, it goes down, it comes back up, and that is when it becomes deciphered through the pineal gland and the pituitary gland, and that's when the magic happens. Like I was telling Tracy the other day, I was like, you notice every month, and anybody watching this can probably relate to this. Every month there's a couple days where you just feel really happy for no reason. You're just like, why am I feeling so freaking good today? Like, why can't I feel like this every day? And then guess what happens? And then it goes away, and then you kind of go back into this descension sort of cycle where it's sort of corruption and sort of chaotic, and you feel like things aren't working out. You're not that good of a mood. You feel irritated or angry, and you blame it on everything else. You blame it on, there was the wrong kind of food. You didn't get any exercise that day. Your boss yelled at you, all these things. But really, it's the destructive path in which the Christos is taking. And this is completely relatable to the cycles of the zodiac. And that's what the whole zodiac represents. It's the transitioning of birth. It's the corruption, the chaos, and then as we go back around, we have dissension, we have collapse, death, and then we have rebirth, and the cycle goes back again. That's the loop in which we see, but it's the same loop physiologically that our body takes, every single month. You know what I mean? It's trying to regenerate. It's a regenerative process, is all it.
Right. And they were saying in that video, they were also talking about how alcohol and certain things that you consume dissipate that sacred oil, and once your oil is gone, you lose your life force.
That's right, because it's acidic, and that's what is cancer. Cancer is what happens when the body becomes so acidic that's when there's no your pH balance is way off. It goes into extra acidic, and that's when everything begins to become overrun. It's the same thing with the oil. When you're too acidic, and you're putting things in your body that are drying up and creating more acidity, then yes, it burns it out. It's like putting the light out. That's what's so interesting about what they call it Christos, which is oil, which is the story of Christ. It's the story of Santa Claus. That's where they get Claus from. It's the claustrum, the trip that the oil takes down the chimney, which is the spine, right? It puts the presents under the tree, which is the tree. The spinal cord looks like a tree. It looks like a pine, pineal gland, pine tree. It it puts the gifts on there at your sacrum, and then you go and you open the gift, and boom, travels back up again. It's everything is so everything.
And then the cross is the symbol of where that oil crosses the barrier.
That's right.
And crosses, what is it? There's an area
the amygdala. I think it's the amygdala. Yeah. I'm not positive that, but I think it's the amygdala. That's where that's when death occurs. That is when the destruction has become complete, and then there's rebirth when the pituitary and the pineal gland, and that's what Christ said about the light. I can't.
And then I guess that 3 days, it rises after 3 days. You said 2.5 days or whatever. It's about 3 days, I guess, for that new rising to happen after it's been buried down into the cave down where the seeds are planted.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's the ascension process.
A lot of analogies. Yeah.
A lot of analogies. And it's like funny, like Bonacci points out, he can tell you any fairy tale that's ever been told, any Disney tale, and show how it's a representation or a co-opted representation of the real natural science. Because these people like Walt Disney and all these Illuminati Masons, Black Masons, I guess if you want to call them that, have co-opted the real knowledge, and they're making fairy tales and stories out of it. And like even religions, everybody takes these things so literally, and that's what they want. Yeah, take it literally. Take all this stuff literally. There was a real Christ, and he walked around and died. But when you really dissect it, you're looking at, well, no, this is an analogy. Not that there wasn't mystics of the time that had these abilities and teaching these things to people. Not that that's not the case, because I do believe that is the case. but they were teaching the real knowledge, and they were the ones being destroyed because of it, because the pharaohs and the kings and the Caesars, they didn't want anybody knowing this because it was theirs, and they can't control people who are running around free because they know what the real knowledge is. You can't pin them down. They're completely living souls at that point in time. They're not
Yeah.
afraid. They're not afraid because they have the knowledge, right?
And they must understand, I think that sinning is really like poisoning the body. And that's really what a sin is. Part of it, it's mental and physical, but I think because we destroy the sacred oil when we consume certain types of things, that part of our aging and death is caused by if I was going to call sinning something, I would call it eating junk, consuming things that kill the life force.
Yeah, and so let me back you up on that a little bit. So the light force, right? That's the sun. That's Ra, that goes to the sky at the night, right? And so the Egyptians, Sin comes from Sinai, Mount Sin. All right. So what happens is that the nighttime is chasing the light across the sky. And once the night comes and there's death, the sun dies, it goes over the horizon, and it's done, and it becomes night, right? So the night has now won. And that is where the word sin comes from. It is the night, is when the light becomes out. It dies when the light dies.
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
exactly what you just basically said.
And all this time we've been thinking that cursing or fighting with somebody or dishonoring is like sin. I mean, that's probably it too. It's just negative energy, but I think that we're these eternal beings, that we can actually live here and really command this environment and become supernatural beings, but we've been programmed to destroy ourselves based on so-called experts who've been telling us for years how we're supposed to live our life, eating 3 meals a day, exercising, drinking coffee. I mean, just, I don't know, all the different stuff. Alcohol is supposed to be fun, going to, becoming a super athlete and regurgitating a bunch of stuff that the Department of Education tells us, just all the different things that go kind of against our free will and our supernatural beingness that has been just kind of programmed to be destroyed so that we don't live up to our potential at all. Not even
Absolutely.
close.
Yeah, we're being stuck in that root chakra. That's the finance. We're all enslaved to the money, and that's right where they need us, because we all are operating the polarization. We are operating on these laws. They're natural laws. It doesn't matter what, we are still operating them. The arguments, what we think words are, the criticisms that are coming, judgments, and all this stuff. But it's all being directed down in the lower materialistic realm. And so if we can take the knowledge and bring it up ourselves to the higher centers, that is when we begin to see these things on a whole nother level. Ron, we got a minute left, man. I'm just seeing
All right. That's good. I think we covered everything we need to do.
Yeah, man, that was good. I feel like we could talk for hours.
I want your audience to take away from this. Don't assume the trustee position when you enter court. You're not that name. Make up a name. It doesn't matter.
There you go. Good advice.
Spell it. Don't say it.
Yeah, or try to stay out of court.
Well, I'll update you. I'll send you more stuff, and if you want to post some paperwork and stuff like that, feel free to.
Oh,
also.
yeah, I can do that, and I'll get your permission first, obviously. Make sure that because some of that stuff's confidential stuff. Be putting out there. But if it's for educational purposes, it doesn't get anybody in trouble. Absolutely, man.
Okay. Well, thanks for this interview. It was great, Logan.
Yeah, man. You too. It's always nice to talk to you. We'll do this again. We'll do this again
All right.
later, man.
All right. Peace out. We could do this all night, I think.
I know, dude. All right, man. I'll be in touch.
All right. Bye.
Later. Cool, man. All right. I stopped the video. Oh, we're still recording. I'll hit stop.